Electricast.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
What we want to do is really solve a traditional gaming infrastructure problem. What we're doing with the decentralized physical infrastructure side, the idea that potentially game developers could incentivize their players with in-game rewards to stay up and act as handshake servers, relay servers for these multiplayer games.
Hey, Ken, welcome back. Welcome back to Brain
Arcade. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, we didn't quite finish our conversation. And actually, I got some feedback from people that they were like, oh my God, I can't believe this episode ended. I felt like you guys had more to talk about and it was too short. And I was like, well, that's good feedback because that means you were engaged. But also, yeah, I felt like the last time we talked, we spent a bunch of time. And this is my fault, but also intentional. I was trying to pump the brakes a little bit so everybody could have like a foundation to build this part of the conversation off of, right? And so and I have a feeling we could even go a third hour, but we'll see how far we get today. But I think you have to listen to this episode after listening to the other episode if you're not very technically minded, because it's going to give you the foundation of what we're talking about. But why don't we start with Ken? Can you introduce yourself again? And also introduce Tashi just as an overview so that we can get straight to it.
Yeah, so I'm Ken Anderson, CTO of Tashi. Tashi is a Web3 technology protocol, but our audience is not Web3. We're not going after crypto or blockchain people. What we want to do is really solve a traditional gaming infrastructure problem. And so what we've built is a set of tools to allow game developers to save money, but also improve their experience and security and still get the good player experience they're expecting. But again, I mean, our goal is to fit right into what game developers are used to subscribing to from a gaming infrastructure perspective, but potentially decrease the cost by as much as 90% because we're using technology that comes out of that Web3 blockchain consensus space.
Right.
So the last time we talked about the technology that we've built that allows you to have peer-to-peer multiplayer leaderless gaming. So no hosts, all of the players have equal authority in the state of the game, and they come to a consensus on what that state of the game is based off the player inputs and a stream of events that happen from the game.
So let's hit the benefits bullets real quick. So no server costs, right?
That's right.
And then the big one that you and I barely touched on outside of this is Forever, right? And so do you want to tell me a little bit about Forever? And do you guys have a trademarked copyrighted name for, is it Forever Gaming or is it I feel like we need to give it a snappy name.
We don't, but I've been playing around with some of the ideas. We originally called ourselves the Forever Game Protocol. Mm-hmm. And that's the benefit of if you take infrastructure out of the equation for multiplayer games, there's no reason for the game to ever go away. Technically speaking, right? Because right now the limitation is if I want to play World of Warcraft, someone's got to host that server somewhere, and that's going to cost money. Mm-hmm. What we're saying is if we change the paradigm to this peer-to-peer leaderless, so hostless model, we take the infrastructure part out of the equation. So technically, there's no reason why the game couldn't just keep being played by its community.
Right. So as an example, I could release a game tomorrow, and it's for say up to 6 players, and then it wanes in popularity for a little bit, and then 6 years from now somebody discovers it and says oh my God, check this out, I can still play this. There's no server, so there's no I could just call my friends and have them join in, and basically the game handles it because it's already set up for that. So there's no server authoritative structure that needs to be paid into by the game owner for some amount of time, right? Like, because I can think of right now, when I worked at Nexon, we had a thing called sunsetting, where basically when you stopped having enough people that justified the cost of the servers, you would start to sunset a game because they weren't generating enough revenue to keep up the upkeep costs. And for anybody that doesn't know, so I was at Nexon between, like, let's just say around 2012. So Maple Story, Vindictus, Combat Arms, etc. But they were all metal servers. Like they had physical servers at different locations in our region. And this is how complex it gets. We had a North America region, right, which also covered a lot of South America. We had a European region, like what we would call kind of the Mideast region, but it included like Turkey, like Eastern Europe. It was like Eastern Europe and Turkey. Then there was the Asia region, and then Southeast Asia were sometimes split. But generally, the people who got screwed the most were like New Zealand and Australia, because they were physically far away from the Asian server centers, but not enough players to justify putting a server in like Brisbane.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and this isn't just a problem for established multiplayer games. I mean, I would think that it's probably more of a product problem for indies and startups. Because I can tell you a number of games right now that I'm working with who started off hosting a server in New York or Virginia, because they were like, that will cover the East Coast and maybe a little bit of Europe, right? Because the latency starts to get a little bit of out of bound. And then they were like, well, we really should set up a server in Europe. So I set up a server in Europe. But so you got East Coast and Northeast Coast and Europe, Central Europe covered. And then I'm like, well, I'm on the West Coast and I want to play your game. And they're like, we can't afford to set up another server.
Right. Yeah. Like they basically need to pre-market a region to get enough players to justify spinning up a server. And so from an indie POV, you and I both know that I have an indie heart. Like my soul is like, punk rock, F the establishment, let's go indie. But I've always avoided doing multiplayer games in my indie endeavors because of not only the complexity of code, right? Because I want to have a great experience, but also the cost. I'm like, this means we're going to have to do like AWS or something like that. And like, also being a little bit of a tech snob, a lot of the cloud server solutions, they're not fast. They're not optimized, right? And so that doesn't guarantee you're going to have a good experience just using AWS or Azure or like any of the other out of the box cloud services. I mean, they're good, right? In fact, they're probably better than most people will notice. But from my POV, it's not going to be like optimized traffic like League of Legends or something like that, where it's like buttery smooth across a continent.
Well, so there's all kinds of factors that go into this. Like you can look at a project like Hathora, for example, who does route optimization for gaming. Sure. And I think they do an incredible job. You have projects like Excelbyte that will kind of manage your load against your player base and distribution and do some type of route optimization. These are all solutions out there, but I would argue they're more expensive than if you just went straight to AWS or Google Cloud or Azure because of that premium tax on it of like, you're also doing route optimization for me. And at some point, when you get to a scale as a studio, you have to say, does it make sense to keep paying the Excelbytes and the Hathoras of the world at their premium price? And we can negotiate those down. But at some point, is it just cheaper for me to hire my own route optimization engineers, my own infrastructure engineers, and then move everything to AWS and G Cloud? And even then, like that's a massive expense for the company.
Well, not only that, and sorry, I'm going to slightly non sequitur off of that and jump a little bit. It's like the horror stories of a small indie studio who has gone with the cloud solution and actually put themselves in the poorhouse because they scaled, like it blew up. Right. And so it wasn't just a server cost, it was the data cost. Like they're pushing so much data through the pipes that they started incurring lots of storage costs and transfer costs. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, we get 1 million players, but now it costs us more to run than we're making. And so like multiplayer, and this is why I've always avoided multiplayer as an indie creator, is like, it's always been, oh my God, I'm not an expert in it. I don't know, like I know enough to get myself in trouble, and I know structurally the things that I probably need, but I don't know enough to optimize it, especially if I don't plan on running a very big business. But what ends up happening is it's not worth doing multiplayer unless I hit certain target numbers. Whereas like for my POV, it's extremely liberating to have the idea that I'm like, oh, actually, I don't have to pay for any of that stuff, which means that I could make a multiplayer game for like 100 buddies, right?
Yep.
Like it's worth it for me to now design something at a smaller scale that has a super tight creative window as far as like, I know some friends, they just want to play like this one map from like StarCraft 2, and I'm just going to do like an HD, quote unquote, an HD remake of it just for them, right? And it now becomes like potentially possible because I'm not incurring any costs, right? And so I can go back to playing it. Actually, I still know people like, you know, both in Reddit and Discord who are still playing, like they're hosting their own server, but they're playing older multiplayer games that aren't supported anymore. And they're incurring their own costs. It's purely volunteer. But if we could do something like this for an indie game, you know, you could potentially, and this is where Forever Gaming comes in, your game could potentially be played forever.
Yeah. So, I mean, you hit a few key points there. You talked about the network cost. You look at, you know, freemium mobile games, you know, anything that Supercell puts out, anything that Cybo puts out, the vast majority of their players aren't paying anything, but they are slamming their servers with network traffic. And I won't say who, but one of them said that as much as 40% of their revenue just goes right out the door to network egress. Just the cost of traffic leaving their servers to the player's mobile device is 40% of the revenue. And then you look at Roblox, I think there's somewhere around $600 or $650 million a year in server infrastructure costs. So there's the server part, which is the simulation. And then there's the network cost, which is the data moving to and from their servers. And depending on which provider they go with, they're going to get charged for one or the other of those. And then you have the specialized providers as well. And this was something that came up. There was a project we were talking to who is doing AI. We call it prompt and play. I think I mentioned it a little bit in our last conversation. And I was like, so when are you guys going to do multiplayer? And they're like, never. They're like, we're already paying for AI tokens. We're not going to pay for multiplayer servers, casual prompt and play games. And I was like, well, what if we could take the multiplayer, that cost out of it? And they were like, oh yeah, done. Let's do it. So what you're talking about is I want to make a game for, you know, 20 of my friends or 100 of my friends that we just want to hop in and play, whether it's prompt and play, whether it's an HD remake of a specific map, a limited scope of a game that you all enjoy. Now you can just be like, cool, I'm going to throw Tashi in there. I'm going to build the game and we're just going to like throw it out to the friends. And that thing, you kind of mentioned earlier, the life cycle of a game, when something comes to a commercial end of life, it's not making enough money for me to justify paying for the servers. Well, in this model, because you're not paying for the servers, you could say I'm done supporting the game commercially and then say, but I'm going to retain the IP and the rights and just hand it off to the community to keep playing. And you're done. It almost changes the way game development works. It flips the model.
It's changed the way that I like, honestly, it's opened up like the vault. I mean, we've already talked a little bit about my vault of like games waiting for execution. Like there's a whole section in my vault that are multiplayer games that we're waiting for that extra step of, you know, what's the commercial part of this product because it has to pay for itself, right? And I had always conceptualized that I was going to need like hard metal servers, like I was going to have to partner with, you know, probably one of the Asian companies because they really know how to do this well at a worldwide level, right? And like pick up a publisher, start splitting revenue. And I'm like, it made fun little games not super worth it, right? Or like not, well, it makes it worth it, but it's like you cap out, you're like always driving for scale, right? And so like what I'm finding super liberating about what like the future that I'm seeing coming is that I could potentially make and sell games to smaller audiences as a subsistence level business, right? Of like, hey, I just want to pay my bills. I actually don't need that many players to keep my engine going, right? And so, of course, everybody wants to make a hit or you want something that people love, but I want them to love it for the game, not because I've designed it to soak their wallets, right?
Right.
Like I want that natural feedback loop back again, as opposed to, black hat monetization where I charge you insurance for insurance on your weapon forging, right? Like,
Yeah.
it gets a little ridiculous.
Well, and as a business owner and as a developer, you are a business owner, right? You have
Right.
to, if you've got an office space, you got to pay rent. If you've got electricity, you got to pay for electricity. If you've got insurance, you got to pay for insurance. If you've got multiplayer servers that have to be running, you got to pay for those server bills. Those
Right.
are all hard costs in running a business or operating as a developer. And what we're saying is we're taking a huge chunk out of it, which is that server cost. And the people part of it and the office part of it can be amortized across multiple titles.
Sure. Yes.
Instead of like really focusing on one title, making sure that pays the infrastructure cost.
Right. Oh, you know what? That's interesting is because if I can build smaller games that are running on multiplayer, right, then basically I can subdivide that cost across like several games, right? Like they all don't have to be as successful. Yeah. They could be like even smaller audiences if I can make them fast enough, right? So
really, and that's what we're doing is we're mitigating a lot of the infrastructure risk. So we're taking some of that cost and eliminating it from the equation so the game developers can continue to build their game freely, distribute it freely, because that's an important part is with this model, you can distribute to the far edges of the earth without concern of having a server regionally nearby that may or may not impact latency. So you have a wider distribution right out of the gate. And here's the forever part. The forever part is I really love that game. I mean, look at RuneScape, right? Mm-hmm. RuneScape is still alive and kicking, right? Even though they're coming out with a new version of RuneScape. The traditional RuneScape is alive and kicking. That's the type of game we want to enable. Too many games have disappeared over the years, to the point where in the EU, there is an initiative from the online collection system that's called Stop Destroying Video Games. And I think I even talked about this last time we talked. But the idea that in the EU, they're saying, hey, listen, I put $14 a month into this game for the last 15 years. Do I have any rights related to that game?
Right.
And that's what the initiative is saying is like, listen, you as a game developer have to figure out how to transition the game over to me. Now, this has nothing to do with IP. It has everything to do with ensuring that the game is in a playable state when you guys decide to commercially end of life the game. Because I've put so much money and time into this, you now owe me.
Right. So you know what's interesting about that though is, and my brain always putting analogies together. It's interesting because I think the counter argument would have been about service, right? That you're paying for service or something like that. And literally the pixels that come across your screen are just what, you don't own those, you're getting those out of the service, right? And who your character is. But everybody creates a data footprint, which I think they should own, right? And so like, my characters and my experiences in the world, etc. That's a whole different discussion. But the interesting part for me is if I build a game using Tashi, it's more equivalent to owning a board game. And then your only responsibility as a player is to find other players.
Okay. So I think that's a great analogy because think about the progression of where games have gone and look at what happened with Switch 2 last week, right? So we started off where you would either have a computer and you'd buy a box with some discs in it and a code, and the game ran. Then you get like a CD-ROM, and then you play the game off the CD-ROM. Then we got consoles, which were they're purpose-built for gaming, and you would get a cartridge or a disc or something like that. But the idea is when you had the device and you had the cartridge, you could play it at any time. You could move it around from place to place. You could take it to a friend's house and play it at a friend's house. You always had this ability of you had the physical device and the physical cartridge or disc with you. Then we moved to like downloadable, which was like, okay, now you can download the game to your machine. But guess what? If that ever gets corrupted or you wipe it off and you try to go and download it again, the company who manages the rights or the licensing to that game have the ability to say, nope, you can't download it this time for whatever reason, right?
Yep.
So the ownership is slowly drifted away. So it's like, okay, well then I'm just never going to delete games off my console because that way they can never take it away from me.
Right.
And then we moved to pixel streaming, which was like, well, you don't even have to use your own device. As a matter of fact, we control the device now.
Right.
And you don't even control the device or the game title. We control the entire environment and you own nothing.
Right. You own the controller, right? Because I'm doing this, like I have a newer Samsung TV in the bedroom and it's amazing. It's awesome. I could play stuff like I could play Game Pass games instantly. Yeah. Oh, well, near instantly, with a very small amount of controller lag. Like I can feel it. And I'm sure like hardcore gamers can feel it, but it feels less than a Stadia actually. Which is kind of crazy. Like it feels tight.
The real question is, can I play Elden Ring on it? That's what I want to know. I got to have those reflexes.
Right. I don't think I've tried Elden Ring on there yet, but mostly I've been playing RPGs or like basically sub 1 second twitch factor, but not frame count. Right. Elden Ring for sure is like frame count level of like twitch factor, but like Cyberpunk 2077, like you really don't have to be precise with your timings on a lot of that stuff. And I know that a lot of people are solving problems with prediction and what you're doing and all that other stuff, and that's fine. But back to like, I like the idea, and this is because I'm a graybeard and old head, right? I like the idea that I'm conceptually making a digital boxed board game for you, and you just have to find other players. Right. Because that means that I can come back to like a product POV and price it and give you a one-time download price. Right. Like this content is worth $10. Boom. And you can have it and you can have it forever. And I'm happy about that. And I don't have to do it I don't have to run it as a service necessarily. I mean, I have to upkeep it. And, if there's bugs, I clearly want to fix them or patch them. But it's no longer like I'm opening a storefront and having to
it's amazing, there's no timeline on which you have to stop earning, and there's no inventory you have to maintain.
Right You don't
have like a box in a storage room that you have to like print and hold on to.
Yes.
And you might not make all of your money for 10 years. In 10 years, a whole bunch of people might buy your game, and you're like, oh wow, that came out of nowhere.
But so it's interesting. All right. Sorry, I'm going to digress a little bit and talk about the game industry, like historically for a second, and lead us back to this. So it used to be mid to late 90s. I used to say like, oh, shelf life is about 6 months. Like your game is relevant for about 6 months. And, for various reasons, saturation and all the other things. But we're also printing box copies. And so like the ability to actually replace inventory on shelves made the cycle slower, right? Then we started getting more towards like day one downloads and like hybrid. And it started turning into like, I started noticing that shelf life, especially for a sales peak, was like 6 days. Was essentially was like you got to like a week of like hot traffic, right? And you didn't want to release on the same week as like Grand Theft Auto or like Halo or anything like that. So you basically had this like window, and people's memories would be like a week later. If you didn't keep pounding them with marketing, your like peak window was like 6 days of like invested buyers. And then mobile came, and then I was like, oh my god, it's like 6 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And then like within the last like 8 years, I was like, holy smoke, you have like 6 seconds of relevancy, right? and it's the 6 seconds
relevancy.
Right. Well, but it's the 6 seconds after either somebody told me about it or I got a link or I got an ad. And so it's like in that moment, like the call to action only lasts 6 seconds. Whereas like when I talk about 6 months, I mean, you would say something like, oh, I need to get the new Mario Kart. And that would stay in your brain for 6 months, and you would save up, right? Or like you had set this goal of getting the new Mario Kart. Whereas like now, like even on the bigger games, you're like, oh, that's cool. It's gone.
Well,
right.
I mean, case in point, Switch 2, right? We all kind of saw it coming.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't until the day that I drove by GameStop and saw a line around the block, I was like, oh, that was today?
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Whereas like before, I would know a week ahead of time to avoid Best Buy.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, nope. Not, I'm like, here are the sections of the city I'm not going to because there's going to be a line, or like I'll drive by to see how big the line is, but I'm not going to participate.
Right.
And so like, by the way, I'm never a day one hardware buyer. Because I don't trust Like I bought one of those like shitty PS2s that broke immediately. Like I do not trust hardware manufacturers to have worked all the kinks out in the first run at all. Like I always wait for run 2. So, but what's interesting about that is it gives me comfort though that now I can say, hey, what's interesting about the idea, and we're going to run with my analogy of like, I sold you a 6-player board game called whatever, Space War 2099, right? And
I mean, you're already on my brain wave right there with Trade Wars 2000.
Yeah, that's right. So then you buy it, and now you can then become an advocate for the game without a requirement for servers. You are now potentially working to sell 5 other copies because you want people to play with, as opposed to previously, like the switching cost is really 0 for any particular game, except for social. Social is the most expensive switching cost, right? Let's take a side trip for switching cost. So switching cost is the amount of money that a player needs to, or that you need to pay for a player to like switch from one game to another, right? And what it's going to cost them. And so the switching cost for players is not the price of your game anymore. It's actually the social component. So my example for this is like, it's like, if you're going to try and beat Riot and League of Legends, you do not build a better featured League of Legends, because all you're going to do is have a better featured League of Legends, but the anchor is social. Like I am not like, I have to build not only a better League of Legends, I need to build a League of Legends that I create advocates in the other community to bring their friends, right? Because to create a healthy community, I need to bring my whole 5-player team, right? So when I say switching cost in this example, what I'm saying is now that I can buy this as a board game, like the switching cost is actually very high for me as a player because I'm now invested in this game personally, and it has nothing, like the social is actually now my cost. Like I need to bring people in so that I can play, right? And so it's the dynamics of what you're building goes so much, have such bigger player implications that I think people really realize. Like, really, you guys should be paying me to write ads, but like, but as a creator, it makes me want to use it because I can build to my budget, right, to the audience that I choose, without having to take in some of these other considerations in a way that is satisfactory to me. I set the terms for success, but like what you're saying is nice. Is like I technically have no shelf space and endless supply. So this game, it might only find 10 players in the first 6 months, but then those somewhere in there, some people become like hardcore advocates, and they're like, one of that group moves to Baltimore. They go there and they're like, my other friends are in a different time zone. I don't get to play with them as much. I'm going to go find 5 new players. Right. And so the thing is you've now enabled the game itself as a marketing tool via the players that really love it, as opposed to right now, somebody might say like, oh, I love Darling Nikki, come play it. And I'm like, right. It's not my speed, and I don't want to get involved in something that might end up costing me $30 a month, right? Like, even though it's free to play.
And look at like the Titanfall launch, right?
Right.
They put so much money into advertising in it. And when they launched the game wasn't ready to get launched. And it was literally a month and that game was dead. But 2 months later, they fixed all the bugs.
Right.
And it became kind of like a cult classic. There was like a niche of players that just absolutely love that game. I still think it was one of the most innovative games when it came to movement in FPS. And even Titanfall 2 is still one of my favorite games. But it was such a fiasco when they lost all those players in that first month. Now, when I try to log in the Titanfall, the servers are dead. Yeah. Like, it's hard finding an active server anymore, even though it's technically an active game. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool for me to call all my old clan buddies and just be like, hey, we're going to have like a Titanfall Saturday, right? We're all going to hop on Saturday morning. We're going to play Titanfall together, just like we used to 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
That would be amazing.
And it's just one of those things of like, now I'm reaching out to old friends to do stuff. I do that right now with Dungeons and Dragons, where I just call up friends and I'm just like, hey, we're going to do a D&D night this Saturday night, and you're on my list. Come on over and,
Do
bring
the thing,
drinks and food and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, why couldn't you do that with your old favorite games? Titanfall would be my pick because I'd call all of my old clan who we all still are in touch and be like, all right, let's get together.
Right.
And as far as the social thing goes, that's powerful because even my son, when he fell in love with Elden Ring, which was like 3 years after Elden Ring came out, he finally played it and was like, oh, I love this game.
Yep.
He started negotiating with me to do chores around the house and he wanted to get paid so he could buy copies for his friends so they could play, play the little multiplayer hack plugin thingy that was at the multiplayer mod, and they could all play together in Elden Ring.
That's amazing.
And so that's that social pressure. Like when somebody finds something they love, and it might not happen when you release it. It might happen 3 years later on the next generation of kids.
Yes.
Or 5 years later. Totally. And then all of a sudden you have this explosion. That's what we're looking to support. That's what we mean by forever game, is that the game just lives forever, regardless of if somebody's hosting servers.
Hey, it's Paris. You know, I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
So what I like about this, so it's interesting. I have single player games in my vault, right? And those, even in this new like direct distribution day, I've even worried about like, oh my God, will I even be able to leave those as a legacy? Because who knows, like if I head towards a specific console or like, do you know what I mean? Like, where does that work? Where is like now, I mean, I've switched my brain completely in the last 12 months over to, I'm just going to start making everything for PC again. And then, you know, we'll deal with ports later, right? Like I'll deal with all that stuff later. And like, I used to always think of myself as a console developer, but the like controllers on PC are so ubiquitous that basically like I can enforce that as a requirement. But it's nice because opening up the vault to like this multiplayer side of things, I can go back to those days when we used to sneak into the MIS department at UCLA and play Syndicate, or like, you know what I mean? Like those, like this modern version of this midnight LAN gaming where you could like get just 2 or 3 other friends and play these smaller multiplayer games, right? Or like the way we used to play Quake, where, you know, over 50% of network traffic at work in the 90s was dedicated to Quake, right? Like internal LAN traffic. So it's really compelling for me. Like so much so I've already started building a project for Tashi, and it's basically it's space war, right? But it's like asteroids, like level of like zero friction flight mechanics. But I'm making it into like a small scale MOBA with like with like a 15-minute max match time, right? And I think I'm gonna go for like average, like whatever 7, like half of that is average like match length, because I want to recapture that like winner stays, loser pays, like high skill cap Twitch skill, and do like lots of opportunities for like, there's a rush strategy, there's some luck involved, etc. And like, I'm almost at the point where I'm going to need to talk to somebody, because I've got like the core mechanics sort of built out. But like once I'm done with that, so it's interesting. Here's where my insecurities lied in that game before Tashi. It's so simple as far as like concept and look that I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get like a free to play publisher to sponsor it. Right. But I do see it as a potential esport, because I want to do like 12 of these arcade style games that are all part of like a decathlon or a dodecathlon or whatever, but they're all smaller. And now that I can do it as like, oh, you know what? I can just put it out and charge like $250. right? Or $3.
Yep.
And then I don't
Yep.
have to worry about complex, like free to play monetization because like, whatever. I like where this comes back to like, I actually don't even care about pirates. I might even let people get like, here, buy it. You get 2 free copies to give to people, right? Like, because I want people to play it. And I don't want the cost to be like a barrier or a bounce factor. I want that more like to be like, yeah, that covers my costs of like making this a little bit. But if I don't have server costs, right, and I don't necessarily have to have free to play, I could build a meta game around it, but that's just a website. And I can do like some web services that now service this game, and it's all potentially affordable out of pocket for me, right? As long as I do, 95% of the dev, it's really just time.
Well, and it can be amortized across all your titles too. So it's not like you have like a title specific server installation or anything like that.
Yeah.
But no, I love that. That's exactly what we're shooting for. And maybe even to kind of take the forever game concept a little bit further. I mean, we know Dennis Dyack, we both know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's building a new game, Dead House Sonata.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if he's told you anything about his game, that story. I'll share with you very briefly what I can still remember because he and I talked for many hours at GDC. But there was an alignment of vision, right? I was trying to take infrastructure out of the equation. And really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to push infrastructure to the edge and optimize it in places that reduce costs so that there is no takedown of the infrastructure. There is no, the infrastructure lives as long as there are people playing the games.
Right.
The infrastructure will live forever. That's my vision, is like, we can make these games that live on forever. Well, the other side to that is, in Dennis's approach, is how do we build a story that lasts forever or that continues to evolve forever? And so he's taken a different approach where he says, and I love the way he puts this, when you look at most games these days, everything's done in seasons, and in each season, you have a quantitative easing of all of the gear and equipment that you've collected thus far, because the next season of gear is more powerful than the previous season of gear. Right. And you put all of this time and energy into getting the previous seasons of gear, and now it's almost like you're starting over in the next season. Right. And that's on purpose, right? That's what gets you to pay for whatever cosmetics you need or whatever materials you need or keep the auction house active or stay locked into the game grinding. And he said, wouldn't it be cool if we flipped that on its head? And we said, the cool thing about your equipment is that if you have something from the previous season that you've done a lot of stuff with, wouldn't it be cool if it powered up in the next season? Right. Because you did so much with it in the previous season?
Yes. Yeah.
So, I've killed 10,000 zombies with this sword. It is now the zombie slayer and has a plus 10 to zombies. Against zombies or something.
We need to talk, or he and I need to talk, because I'm working on a different project that has a similar thought process where essentially it's kind of like all the good stuff from Ultima. Like the more you do a thing or the more you use a thing, the more valuable it becomes but without all the degradation of skill stuff. But also, like, what's interesting to me about the potential to log things on a ledger, right? Or essentially allow people to make their own NFT in game, is it becomes personal then, right? And so like keeping track of like this sword killed 13,000 zombies, right? And so like, and because of that, it gets +2 to against zombies or something, but it's unique to your sword. It now becomes the like Ken Anderson sword of zombie slaying, right? And so it becomes unique in a way that it's no longer like the rarity scale means nothing anymore, because I am making stuff that's unique to me, right? Like there is a uniqueness of one. And so you might have a zombie sword too, but maybe that's yours. This one's mine, right? And that ownership feeling is super powerful. I think people discount how big that could be. And they're also, motivated by monetization, which almost negates everything that we've talked about because it requires like scale and resaleability, right? So
well, and I got to we'll just say I got to play an alpha of Dennis's game.
Okay.
And there's already a lot of those mechanics baked in. So you're a vampire.
Okay.
And you get weapons, and the first weapon you start with is a sword. And you collect runes by accomplishing certain things. And then you power up those runes by doing these tasks. And then you can attach those runes to your weapon. And then that becomes, so it could be something like, I beat this boss when the sun was down. And so it becomes like the zombie night slayer or something like that.
Yes.
Because it has bonuses at nighttime and bonuses against zombies and whatever. Now, here's the cool part that Dennis is playing with, which I'm really keen to see how it plays out. And he's going to be using some AI and some NFT stuff and all that stuff.
Sure.
But the idea that everything has memory, which also means eventually everything has sentience.
Oh, that's interesting. Like it remembers itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So say like 5 ages later, the world has changed now because the game has gone through multiple patches through the ages, but somebody picks up your sword. They buy it from you off the auction house or whatever, or you trade it, and they're walking around and they walk through they do these quests in this region, and the sword starts whispering things to you about that region from 7 ages ago.
That's so amazing.
Like, I remember this.
I
remember this place.
But
we defeated the dragon of whatever in the second age here. There was a mighty castle, and you might get like a flash of vision of like what it looked like during the battle from like
that's so
5
cool.
ages ago.
What's really fun about that is so like Borderlands 2, which I still think is the pinnacle of the Borderlands games, introduced a gun that was kind of rare to find, but it was a robot gun and it would talk to you. And it was the first time I had seen that. And I know a lot of people that's sort of become more common in games now.
Yep.
I mean, I worked on Saints Row 4 and I forget what the name of the unicorn gun was, but he would talk to you too. That was actually a lot of fun. But I love the idea that it had this illusion of life going on. But what's super fun about giving it a memory is like, and if you could give it personality, you could be like, my last owner was so much cooler. Or like,
we killed way more zombies.
Or like, you're so much nicer than my last owner.
Are you familiar with Brandon Sanderson, the author?
Yes. Yeah.
So he's got, as a matter of fact, I've got my little Nightblood here, my mini Nightblood here. Nice. A sentient sword that was designed to destroy evil, but it doesn't know what evil is. So it's incredibly powerful and is constantly asking the holder of it, like, oh, is that evil? Should we go kill it? So it's like, there's kind of like this weird, so to get the sword to give you its powers, you have to convince it that whatever you're attacking is evil. But it also mistakes things for being evil because it can read your mind too. Emotions and stuff get involved. Yeah. So anyway, it's, I'm sure there are lots of cool dynamics you can come up with that type of stuff of, like you have a sword that is sarcastic or like a claptrap style personality.
So what's fun about that, and I'm going to continue on with my, by the way, the name of my project is Red Graph Blue. And so like, I'm going to color code it to be like the RGB, basically like Tron, but RGB. And so like all neutrals are green. But like, what's really neat about that, I haven't really started thinking too much about metagame. And sorry, basically what I'm doing is I'm adapting what we're talking about back into my own project, right? Which is like, wouldn't it be really cool if, and I've been thinking about this as pilots, like, you could get pilots and collect them and they start to get these properties that you build up, but you're saving it kind of locally. And this, we can like, I think I could probably design a meta system where basically there's these properties that the pilots are handing off to each other. Right. And so that like the more you develop your pilot, sort of the more bonuses you get, or there's a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors system. But also like when two pilots meet, they're like, oh my God, they're instant friends. You guys can't fight. Right. Or like, basically build these relationship like network, but I don't need a server for it, which is really fun because I can do these network effecty kind of things without knowing what all those little pieces are potentially. And like I said, I can host a bunch of this stuff on a website because we're talking about very, very small amounts of data, and they can just be player profile sort of saves without needing like a full like real-time server solution. I don't know. If the listeners can't tell, like I'm super excited about the potential of this technology, and I'm absolutely like headfirst into building something for it. And exploring this.
Well, and I think we've always wanted to have something like this forever game model, but commercially it's not viable for multiplayer games unless you do strictly peer-to-peer, in which case right now your option is host client, which in many cases leads to imbalances especially in competitive games. There's imbalances in the mechanics of it, especially if the host can mutate the state or change something, or
just like, packet injection, like there's so many
latency
ways.
advantages.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's super exciting because I want to create like super competitive games without needing a server. That's just where my brain is. It's just that the stuff that I wanted to build, I could never make a business case for. Right.
Yeah.
In fact, part of me making a business case for all the little games that I made was actually packaging them up as a bundle or an arcade. Mm-hmm. Right. So like I said, the decathlon of like arcade games. So it would be like twin stick shooter and, a bunch of stuff that was all like short session, winner stays, loser pays. And then
I love those,
like just the modern version. Anyway, that wasn't possible before. There's zero chance like ArenaNet or Netflix or not Netflix, sorry, Nexon, or like, any of the other large free-to-play companies would even pick this up. Like, forget about EA. Microsoft, maybe, if I got in good with like ID and Xbox, but then I have other issues. And so it's like, it's fun because now I can divorce myself from all the corporate overhead, build a bunch of little games, like conceptualize them as like, like board games in a box product, and then put them out and then be okay with, I got like 100 players that really love this game. It's awesome. Yeah. Right. As opposed to, I need to get 1.2 million downloads to break even.
That's right.
To justify the server costs. Right. Like,
and I think that's the switch, right? Yeah. That right there is the switch in the paradigm of game development.
Yes, absolutely. And, it's where we're at right now. And it's something I'm going to start trying to reinforce with all of the more junior people that I'm talking to, is that if you go indie, don't necessarily make your job to scale your company. Like that may not be, it's a choice. Like you now have the option of potentially doing these multiplayer games as smaller, like culty kind of classics, right? Mm-hmm. So it's super fantastic. I am excited. So is there a third hour here? Do you want to talk about more stuff, or is there more Tashi related stuff, or do you just want to come back on and shoot the shit?
Yeah, no, there's another angle here of changing the economics for game developers.
You're right.
As what we're doing with the decentralized physical infrastructure side, the idea that potentially game developers could incentivize their players with in-game rewards to stay up and act as handshake servers, relay servers for these multiplayer games.
Oh, that's super fun.
Yeah. So the idea is that people would pay something like 5 cents per CCU per day or something like that, right? Or 3 cents per CCU per day. And that revenue comes in to the top of the DPIN business funnel.
Yep.
And then gets distributed out to the nodes that are acting as relay servers or handshake servers or matchmaking servers. And those would be players. But players don't care about making money. Players want to get in-game stuff. So if I, as a developer, say, I've got 1,000 players playing my game, and when they're not playing, they're going to stay on and earn me money as a developer, and I'm going to reward them with in-game cosmetics or gear or loot drops or whatever.
Totally.
I've now created a revenue stream for myself. And here's the crazy thing. Because we're doing a reward structure, like a reward point system, it's tax efficient. Meaning, have you ever got taxed on receiving mileage points?
Sure.
Have you ever gotten taxed when you redeemed your points for for flights or for hotels?
Right. No.
So as a developer, I'm earning points that could then be spent on infrastructure in the same network. So whatever costs I do have with these relay nodes and all that stuff could be offset by my player base.
Right. That's awesome. That's super awesome. Well, because like I'm going to go buy a house in Topeka now. I'm gonna go rent a closet in Topeka, like set up a Tashi server. So and pipe my own games through it.
High demand. That's what it is. The high demand areas, low supply is where the biggest rewards are going to be going.
For sure.
But even you wouldn't have to do that. If you built a cool game and you said to your players, hey, leave the loading screen or leave the launch screen up to support other players playing the game.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like the City at Home project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's got a little like countdown on it that says, you're going to earn another loot box in a period of time. And they just leave their computer on until that thing clicks. Click. They earned a little bit towards the loot box. Click. They earn. They earn these little points that go towards loot boxes. And they just have to leave their computer on. They just let it sit there. And then their computer in the background is Bean Relay or a proxy or a handshake server or a lobby or matchmaking for other games, and earning that 3 or 5 cents per CCU that then funnels up to you as a developer. You don't have to buy a house in Kansas.
Sure.
In Topeka.
Yeah.
You can just get a bunch of players in Topeka,
right,
and collect that. And now you literally have no expense.
All right, we should wrap it up. But like, sorry, my brain went to like, how do I get people regionally excited for the same game? And it's basically like, oh, it's the KU version of Monopoly. It's essentially if I build a game that knows what region you're in and then customizes your stuff, right? Like, like basically I could potentially make like regional attraction for certain things. So hold on to that. Thanks for coming on again. I think like, I'm hoping that people got out of this the advantages of the Tashi network as far as like building it for indie games. If not, feel free to leave me comments or, ask Ken questions or whatever. We'll figure out a way to get you the information. But come on again and let's talk about the economic impact of this besides the dev cost, right? Because you hit a couple of interesting things, and I mentioned a couple things like it's essentially like a serverless. I can erect like a Meta live service, but it's like I don't need the game server. So basically I can do lots of interesting sort of account-based stuff as part of the reward system. And I'd love to explore that with you in our next episode of Two Wizards on a Hill. Talk about wizard stuff. So thanks for coming on again, man. I always enjoy having this conversation with you. And like you and I are going to be playing Red Graph Blue within a couple months.
I'm down 100%.
Okay. Awesome. Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeewithcross.com.
I'm Iris, host of Or Whatever Movies and the forthcoming Powers of Darkness podcast. For the better part of a decade, we've been unraveling a literary mystery that begins with a strange version of Dracula. Yes, that Dracula. It's a different story, imbued with a potentially insidious agenda. What we've already found so far reshapes what we thought we knew, but the investigation isn't over. Support our efforts to finish what we've started and bring the full story to light. Go now to Kickstarter.com and search up Powers of Darkness to learn more. Coming soon on Electricast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Electricast.